No, just wait, just wait. Till the screen goes, we can't do anything. The technicians are there. We are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to have all of you with us on this wet afternoon, but it's good to have you here. And even though the sun may not be shining, the three panelists who are here exude warmth and brilliance to compensate for the absence of the sun outside. Can I begin by requesting Principal Uma Maheshwari to give a note of welcome?
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. I welcome all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to this wonderful forum on this monsoon wet afternoon. To begin with this kind of a collaboration with the Free Press Journal. My sincere appreciation from the Department of Mass Media of our college, taking this initiative and making a formidable step towards having a collaboration with this kind of it, where students can have an excellent exposure and a kind of interaction with the expertise, as just now Bhaskar sir said. The panelists that we have chosen who are going to contribute and share their views with them shall bring definitely brilliance and radiance and whatnot that students are looking out for. I am extremely happy the theme that is chosen, the title chosen as
Principal, can I interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
In the group has the YouTube link also on.
Okay.
Causing a lot of vibration, echo. So
okay.
YouTube link on, please switch that off. Sorry.
Okay. So the topic that we've chosen as whether agriculture matters, I think this question becomes so important, especially to Indians, for a long history that we have, and we constantly keep talking about agricultural land of ours and the connection that we have. How are we going to make it with an industry based? And where is it actually heading towards? What kind of a future is meant for it? I think the present generation who are especially getting into mass media and the other kind of field need to have a better understanding, a good clarity on this subject, and then take wonderful steps which would make a lot of matter easy, meaningful, and fruitful to the country. And therefore, this panel discussion we have been looking out for, and a continued series that we have planned with Free Press Journal is going to be really very, very engaging and enriching for till August. I don't have words how much to thank Free Press Journal having chosen our college to collaborate with, and with our staff members who have taken, my colleagues, Dr. Vanita and Ruchita, taken so much of important steps towards making this program live. I once again take this opportunity to welcome those who have come in hundreds and thousands today to watch. I take this opportunity to welcome each one of you for this forum. And I'm extremely happy, our Bhaskar sir, to being the moderator for it. And we are eagerly forward to this discussion to unfold.
Thank you. Thank you, Principal Maheshwari. One small thing that I think all of you should know, that the reason why we decided to work with SIS was one, it made sense. Both of us were in the business of education. They through classrooms, I through the media house. But the second more important reason was I'm a student of SIS. I've been teaching there for donkeys of years, and they've not thrown me out yet. So,
dare not.
Never.
So that is another reason, Principal, why I thought it would be great if SIS and FPG could get together.
Yeah, very true.
Okay.
Thank you once again.
Yes.
Thank you, Principal Ma'am. Thank you. With your welcome address, I think we are definitely going to dive in the further learning process about agriculture. And I hope with all the panelists giving their insights will definitely lead to a road from distress to development in this depressive economy altogether. Thank you, ma'am, for joining with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is wonderful. And now that we have reached the stage, I would like each of the panelists to spend a few minutes talking about their views, and then we start interacting among ourselves. And after the interactions, we invite questions from the audience, which as usual, quite capably, Dr. Vanita Rane will ask them of the panelists and me. Could we begin with, now who do we take first? I suppose Arun Raste comes first in alphabetically.
Yes.
Dilip Rajan, sorry, he comes first alphabetically.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome, Bhaskar, and to SIES and Free Press Journal for hosting this webinar. It is indeed my privilege to share and contribute along with my esteemed panel, Arun and Simon. So hello, everyone. I recently made the transition from pharma to farming. So you could take my comments today as either coming from a novice or someone who has done his due diligence before making the switch. I leave that to your judgment. So today's topic, why agriculture matters for India, almost seems like a rhetorical question. I would start by stating that agriculture has always mattered for India, has always been a key contributor to India's growth story, and would slightly reframe this question to why does it matter in this era of COVID? Now, since independence, India has seen recession thrice, in 1958, in 1966, and in 1980. The reason was the same each time: a monsoon shock that hit agriculture. Now, then agriculture was a sizable part of the economy. As all of you are aware, we are undergoing currently another recession. Now, what is different is that in this one, most likely we could be bailed in large part by agriculture. So in the past was the causative, this can be the cure for our economy. Let me put that into perspective with a few statements, right? As all of you are aware, this unprecedented crisis that COVID has brought forth will lead to global recession, financial instability, unemployment, and food security issues. And India is not immune from that as well. Having said that, agriculture could be that silver lining, that sole bright spot in the overall gloomy economic outlook. Be it the World Bank, be it the IMF, they are now projecting the Indian economy to grow less than 2.8% for this fiscal year. Now, this is from the highs of 7.5%, 8%. But experts today are all concurring that agriculture alone could give India's economy, the overall GDP, a boost by 0.5 to 1%. And that's very significant. Now, agriculture can also resuscitate India's stalled economy and infuse the much required demand into the system. While it is true that agriculture contributes anywhere between 15 to 17% of our GDP, a primary rise in rural demand will be key to reviving not only the economy, but it also provides food security. Agriculture also provides jobs for half the country, and with the migrant population that's gone back to their villages, probably even higher. But more importantly, it provides livelihood sustainability for our entire nation. So now the question is, how do we cash in on agriculture to revive our economy in this COVID times? India is a smallholder farmer country, and that is where we need to start. I think smallholders will need support not only to enhance their productivity, but also to market the food they produce. Doubling farmers' income will require addressing issues such as access to credit, insurance, post-harvest technology, and investment in agriculture. I heard in the outset, a lot of people are in the business of media. I think we also need to change the narrative from just food security to more of a nutrition security, from just farm productivity to raising farmers' income. And also perhaps start calling it agribusiness and not agriculture. It's a slight nuance, but it changes the perspective. There has to be a concentrated and coordinated efforts to promote farming for the marginal farmer, for the migrant workers, and more importantly, for the youth that is on this call as an economically viable profession. Now, COVID has affected multifactorial, But let me bring something about how it has affected or brought to sharp focus what I call the need to reorient our food basket. Today, plant-based nutrition are considered as a more sustainable systems of production and consumption for the environment and nutritional viewpoint. Now, this also fits well with the sustainable development goals of responsible consumption and production. Now, like all of us on this call, we as consumers have signaled our eating habits may change permanently. We will prefer eating more at home, eating more vegetables and fruits, and growing the own food in our kitchen or home garden. What does this require?
Yes.
A totally different product and service innovation, knowledge transfer for these stakeholders, and perhaps different business models to us as consumers. I know there's a lot of young people here. You will all agree with me that technology will completely disrupt the agri-value chains. It will drive higher productivity. It will create new channels to market. And this pandemic, above all, has shown us the immense value of digital tools. And agriculture cannot be left behind anymore. Now, for a country that involves millions of smallholder farmers, India will need to adopt a systemic application of digital tools for both production and timely supply. We all know the SMS, right? There is sanitizer, there is mask, and there is social distancing. The SMS here will also apply. Social distancing and safety norms are here to stay for a long time, for some time at least. What does this mean? This could lead to reduction in labor density for the first time in farming. And what does that mean? Consequently, more automation in farming. So the key takeaways that I'd like to leave here is after years and perhaps decades of augmenting production and ensuring food security, today India is embarking on a very different path with pronounced focus to cash in on the era of surpluses and to alleviate agrarian distress. But to do that effectively, India will need to break new ground by deploying solutions that for rapid, for sustainable, and more importantly, resource efficient growth. I believe in doing so, it will make agriculture sector an intellectually satisfying and an economically gratifying profession. Lastly, the path to sustainable agriculture and food security or to agrarian prosperity lies in the hands of the educated youth, the people that are on this call. If you choose to take up agricultural production and other related activities based on integrated application of science and the social wisdom, our untapped demographic dividend will become our greatest strength. So therefore, to conclude, as the largest enterprise in the country, agriculture has always mattered for India. And in 2020 could very well become the 1991 for agriculture. India with its robust demand, India with the attractive opportunity it has, with the timely policy support that both our federal and state governments are providing, and the unique competitive advantage that we have. I am personally pleased to see the renewed focus in this sector, the facilitation by both public and private sector, and above all, the interest from non-traditional players. To me, when we increase rural demand, our economy revives, as it provides food security, jobs for more than half the country, and the livelihood sustainability for the entire nation. So with that, thank you, Bhaskar. I pass it on to the next speaker.
Okay, before the next speaker comes in, I need to make an apology. I forgot to introduce Dilip Rajan to you. Dilip Rajan is the managing director of SIES, which is a Netherlands headquartered company, one of the largest players in the world in seeds. And we'll be having a session on seeds, on fruits and vegetables very soon. And he'll be there again with us. So I thought I should just, my apologies for not introducing you right in the beginning. Our next speaker is Arun Raste, who's the executive director of NDDB. And anyone who has to look at the milk revolution Even vegetable revolution and now the oilseeds revolution has to look at NDDB. And like Dilip, who's a newcomer to this industry, Dilip Raste is a newcomer to Anand, which is the headquarters for NDDB. He was a Bombayite, as I learned just recently, and now he's the helm of affairs in perhaps the greatest engine for transformation of agriculture and the dairy sector in the country. Arun, can we have your views?
Thank you, Bhaskar. It's good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with Simon and Dilip. There are two things when Bhaskar spoke to me. I realized that as we know, agriculture is not more than 1,000-year old. If you start from Adam and Eve, they just had an apple to eat. They were, more dependent on horticulture than anything else. And we are going back to horticulture, yes, as Dilip was saying now. So, from Adam and Eve, we were, people who were nomads. We were hunters, and then we started a little bit settling. It was just about 1,000 years ago that we came into agriculture as we know today. And then next 700 years, there was 700, 800 years, there was no change. And then about 200 or 300 years ago, the industrial agriculture came in. That was a major shift from the earlier agriculture to industrial agriculture. So if you see predominantly for last 1,000 years, there has been hardly any change as far as the agriculture practices are concerned globally, not only in India, but globally. That's one thing which we should know as compared to any other industry or any other sector. There has hardly been any change as far as the production is concerned. On the production side, there were a couple of other changes which impacted not only agriculture, it impacted everybody else. So if you look at pesticide, if you look at insecticide, if you look at chemicals, the use of that, though it increased those industries much, it also increased issues related to environment. So that was one impact of agriculture on environment. And the major part of it went into soil erosion. It also led to possibly water depletion. See, I remember when I was young, and Mr. Bhaskar should have known this much earlier than me. South of Mumbai was the area, or east of Mumbai, east of India was the area where rice was grown. But today, if you look at the major rice producing regions of the country, there are Punjab and Haryana, which never ate rice, which never produced rice. And rice came there because there was plenty of water there. And if you look at the water tables, that is the level, the aquifer's level from where the groundwater comes, they're already in black. So it means the groundwater is already depleted there. So the kind of agriculture we have been practicing over the years, which possibly was unscientific, which possibly was led because of the hunger and the demand of population, which was ever increasing. So the land was limited, water was limited, the population was increasing. And therefore, we had to use every single resource at our command to feed our hungry people. So that was the stage we were in. And then the Green Revolution came possibly. And today, at least, we are self-sufficient as far as our food needs are concerned as a country. I'm very happy to say that we are probably the second largest grower of fruits and vegetables in this world. We are the largest dairy producer in this world. We are the second largest pulses producer in the world. But then, is it economic? And there comes the question, how important is agriculture? Say, Dilip just mentioned that the share of agriculture in economy is going down. It has gone down from 40% about 50 years ago to just about 15% now. 35% depletion in the share of agriculture in economy. How do we increase it? So what is different between agriculture and industry at the moment is one, as I said, all these young people, they don't find agriculture as a fancied occupation. They don't want to go and do dirty things in villages or rural areas or being near the soil. But then there are certain examples which are very, I would call in today's lingo, very sexy examples. Say Mahindra and Mumbai. They are automakers. But are you aware that they export about 9,000 tons of grapes every year? For the last 15 years, Mahindras have started exporting grapes. And what they did, and they are exporting to countries in Europe and to countries in countries like Canada, which have strict compliance and certification needs. What did Mahindra do? They mapped the supply chain. They had a focused attention on farmers, and they were very transparent. And in a sense, what they achieved in 15 years was increasing the income of farmers 5 times. The same grape farmer, their income has gone up 5 times. So as I said, we have limited land, we have limited water, and if we have to reboot our economy post-COVID, what we need to do is reboot our agriculture. And how do we do that? One, we require a lot of these young people with young ideas and new ideas to come into agriculture. Second, we need to look at the demand side of agriculture. Now, if you look at, say, 20 or 25 years ago, when Pepsi and Coke came into India, they didn't have the kind of potato which they wanted. And they started something called contract farming at that point of time. They gave seeds and they contracted farmers to only sow potatoes for them. And we had certain kind of potatoes which was being used by them. Same thing with Dynamics Dairy near Pune. When McDonald's wanted a particular quality of cheese, Dynamics Dairy came up. So the demand-driven agriculture is something which we'll need to promote going forward. That is the second part of it. And third, as I said, we are the second largest grower of horticultural crops, vegetables. But if you look at the export share of India in the global market, it is just about 2%. Even small countries like Thailand, they export much more than us. And if you look at the balance of payment, after probably 10 or 11 years, thanks to COVID, our balance of payment this month was in our favor. Otherwise, we keep on importing petroleum products and we keep on sending our dollars out. So if we want to gain dollars, if you want to enhance our economic security, we need to be what China is to industry. We need to be the food basket of the world. And that is the scope which Indian agriculture has to become the food basket of this global food requirement. When I was young, probably the global population was just about 4.5 billion people. Today it is 7 billion. So number of people is going up. Nutrition security is going up. And the demand for nutrition security is going up. And who can feed this whole world? Probably India can. India is the only country in the globe where we have right from snow-clad mountains to seas every season, and we can grow anything and everything under the sun. And that is the scope for this agriculture. What you require is three major things. One is the demand side renovation or innovations. That's one. Second, as far as supply side is concerned, major changes in the use of water. That will be required for the simple reason that water is not abundant. Water is very, very limited, and we need to judiciously use it for our future generations as well as for our present need. These two. And third, I wouldn't so much go into government policies because wherever government comes in, possibly we have more regulations. So I would like government to keep out of this and let younger generation take agriculture in their hands. Thanks. These were my opening remarks. Thank you, Bhaskar.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And now we come to our list. Who comes from that multinational company? Everyone's heard about Bayer, India. A Bayer, for me, when I was a young boy, was always a pharmaceutical company. It was only later that I came to know that they're very strong players in agriculture. And they're very strong players in every aspect of agriculture, whether it's pesticides, whether it's nutrients, or even seeds. And so we thought it'd be good to have someone from Bayer, and we're delighted to have Simon coming in. He's the executive director of the company, and with a wide experience in seeds and this field of agriculture, which is such a vast field. I'm waiting to hear from him. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. And I was going to complain that
Namaste.
That first of all, Bhaskar, the Free Press Journal, thank you for the opportunity. And I was really going to complain that after Dilip and Arun, it becomes really, really difficult to add anything of value in terms of the free speech. So excuse me if I'm a little bit shorter than 10 minutes, but I'll correct you on one thing to start with. Bayer in India is actually a very Indian company. We have more than 120 years in the country. We are backward integrated. We have production, and we're even stock listed here. And you speak with one of two foreigners out of 12,000 people working for this company,
which is true.
So we are multinational backed. That's clear. But we spend 80 to 90% of our efforts for Indian agriculture. And that's just very important to realize, because sometimes there is this discussion between multinational focuses. Now, let me try to do two things here. One, I'd like to go a little bit into what we've been observing around COVID. And then I'll also try to give it a little bit of flavor on the back of also what Arun was saying. What could India be in a global food supply chain, right? And I think one thing is very important to see with whatever it was, the onset of the 15th of March or so, it actually didn't even take 7 days for the government to realize that agriculture needs to be supported. Yeah, while you would be sitting here and saying it is self-explanatory that it is essential, I am talking agriculture or agribusiness throughout, because that was where the crunch in the supply chain was bound to potentially cause out of a health crisis, which we all, and I think even today, it's still difficult to judge how bad is the health crisis, might actually end up being a hunger crisis in a country like India. And here, I must say, it was impressive to see, and I've seen it in other countries, by far not as efficient, how quickly we got the agri chain working in the country. And it was also impressive to see how quickly a lot of which I would have called before digital pilots or little games actually became mainstream in terms of continuing to serve the country and serve the farmers in this country. And when you think of the demographics of farming, it is now the time for young people to look into agriculture. Not only is it going to be the only economically growing area of the country, and we heard about this before, but I think it's going to be also a more and more, may I use even the word sexy employer. Agriculture, yes, it's true in many ways, is still very traditional in India, but it's not necessarily just because Indian farmers are backward. But I think in many ways, we have not been able to make the market connections and manage the risks that farmers face in a well enough manner for them to really be ready to invest into future technologies. I believe this is changing. There were some major policy decisions made, and while I do agree government should only regulate what needs to be regulated, in this environment that we're in the country, it's actually important for government to set the right perimeters and potentially actively pull themselves out, as they've done with the recent decisions on the mandis.
Yes.
Now that is one where I do believe it opens up huge opportunities, but we shouldn't underestimate the risks. The mandis were consolidators, and anyone who wants to buy produce in the country needs a consolidator.
Yes.
And that is where, if we're talking FPOs, which is another area, farmer producer organizations, which are being supported, you need to think of these being companies, for-profit organizations, which need to be professionally managed. So we're looking at actually finding rural management opportunities, which need to be staffed with smart people who have economic understanding, to are able to run these new entities and make those market linkages. I think Dilip was referring to it. We will see that the shift that we've experienced to you get your groceries delivered to your doorstep is going to be more permanent than some people are assuming at this point.
Yes.
That means this supply chain needs to be made more robust, and over time, where a lot of discussion is on quality, on healthiness, on nutrition. Yeah, I think it's very important to realize we are self-sufficient in grains in the country, but we should not believe that we're nutrition sufficient across how we feed 1.3 billion people growing still. And that is why, to come back to the original question, why is agriculture important, or why does agriculture matter in India? The simple answer to me is there's 1.3 billion people growing to almost 1.7 within a foreseeable future for most of us, and they deserve to be better fed. With this, let's go into the question and answer, because I think that really adds the value for everybody.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. And I must mention one more thing. Yes, I should have mentioned right in the beginning that Bayer is more Indian than multinational, but that is true of most German companies that are there in India. They have been one of the most profitable segments of Indian industry. And incredibly, unlike many other multinationals, the Germans have integrated with India in a manner that many foreigners have not. And thank you, Simon, for mentioning that. Okay, just before I pass on the questions to the audience, I have just two questions I want to get the panelists' views. The first question is, one, when one reads The Economist, when one reads the Fortune magazine or Forbes, they all talk about a growing food shortage the world over, point one. Point two, when I look at India and what India has done and what is possible to be done in the field of agriculture, I believe that this is a scare, a bogey. And if you apply your mind, there should be no food shortage at all. Open to you all.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I mean, there is two things to it, right? And as I was saying, food and nutrition are two completely different aspects to look at.
Yes.
You have a point. I think were we to see the optimal situation in terms of waste management, in terms of distribution, etc., you could argue there is enough food to go around. Also, were you to look at calorie intake and the necessary versus over intake of calories. We talk about obesity around the world, etc. So that is true per se. Still, what we don't take into consideration when we take a look at the long term is how things are changing, how food habits are changing, how people move up the nutritional ladder, how also pressures on farming grow. Arun was saying the right thing. The way we grew our food yesterday will not be economically, socially viable in the future. We need to put a price to water. We need to put a price to land. And if you ask me, in India, we need to put a price to human labor, which takes social aspects into consideration and not just rupee per hour. And that will change things significantly. So from that perspective, if I look at it from an Indian, purely Indian point of view, we must concede that today, in terms of the resource input, and I'm specifically also referring to the human cost, we are utterly inefficient in terms of how we produce that food, which currently we see as sustaining the food needs of the country. And that is where we need to get so much better. And that is where, if we get this better, I tell you, we can be the exporter, we can be the breadbasket, we can be everything. But first we need to fix India.
Yes.
The rest will come automatically.
True. Very true.
Dilip and Arun?
Yeah, Bhaskar, I'd like to concur with almost all of what Simon has mentioned. The only other thing I would add is, while it's true, as Arun mentioned, there hasn't been much of a, what do you see, a seismic shift in agriculture. I think moving forward, it is not about food security. It is the nutrition security. As we
exactly, yes.
Number one. Number two is we also need to understand that the resource constraint is going to continue. So India will need to adopt newer technologies faster, whether you call it precision agriculture or what is called a circular agriculture, because our resources are going to get on and on constrained. Now, from a nutritional standpoint, Bhaskar, if you look at the guidelines, WHO guidelines, even today, Indian consumption of vegetables and fruits is far below what are the international standards. So on one hand, as Simon mentioned, it's the twin dilemma. You have malnutrition, and India has a significant amount of malnutrition. And on the other hand, you have obesity. So the real, how do you balance this out? And I don't believe we will be constrained for food security. I think the narrative has to move towards making this much more viable and ensuring that we're able to draw more with less.
Okay, good. Arun?
I agree with both Simon and Dilip, but I want to add a couple of other points. One, as we compare India to the rest of the world, and what the rest of the world is looking at now, being vegetarian, being vegan, in India, traditionally 50% or more than 50% population is already veg or vegan. And for them, getting their nutrition security would be a challenge for us. And how do we look at that? Second, as I said earlier, land is limited. That is finite. But we need some more resources to take care of today's 7 billion or maybe tomorrow's 10 billion if we become 1.7 billion. So one resource which globally has not been looked at for supporting agriculture is the sea.
Yes.
And things like aquaponics. And that will be the future of agriculture in India. In harmony with nature, can we look at sea and aquaponics as new frontiers for us? And this will be very, probably appealing to the younger generation. It gives you excitement. It gives you a new thing. It gives you an ability to experiment. At the same time, it gives you abundant water to experiment with. And fortunately, we have a long coastline, which is at the moment not used at all.
Yes.
And hopefully the government doesn't have any clue as to what to do about it. And if people take initiatives, this is one area which could be explored in future.
Okay, excellent. Except I'm a little worried. The second you go into the sea, the government raises the defense security flag. Whatever you want to see, you want to do a marina, security. You want to do something else, pleasure boating, security. I mean, you can't develop the sea if you're going to raise flags every time. That's okay. That's a different thing. But let me ask you one more question before I turn the questions over to the audience. And that is, speaker after speaker has talked about better usage of resources. And as the panelists have talked about, water is a critical resource. You can't manage water till you first measure water. Nowhere in India. You start all planning with measurements. What do you think? How do you think the government could be persuaded to look at measurement and to look at water policy for agriculture? Open to you all.
It's a matter of habit. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Arun.
It's a matter of habit. Bhaskar,
Yes.
When I was young, I remember I used to travel by train from North India coming to Maharashtra on my summer holidays. And we used to carry our water. And there used to be on railway stations, we used to get down, take water and get in. But today, the same me buys water. I don't mind paying some 20 rupees to buy a bottle of water. So it's a matter of habit. So if urban consumers are today willing to pay for water, over a period of time, if politics doesn't come in, even the rural consumers will start paying. And once consumers start paying, it might get extended. Industry as it is paying for water.
Yes.
Consumers are paying for water in urban India. Slowly, even in rural India, they will start paying. I know in my own village in Ratnagiri district, we pay to the local municipal corporation for half an hour of tap water if our well dries. If our well dries. So in rural India, it has started. I remember in Argentina there was a sort of revolution against the water taxes or selling of water by the government. But that's over a period of time. I think water will be required to be monetized in the sense that you need to put the cost of water as one of the input costs. And the earlier we do that, the better it will be.
Excellent.
On the same line, Mr. Arun, if I can interrupt, how do you justify the quality of the water, trust people to get that water, even for a payment that they make it? I think the generation is going to ask this question to the
Again, it's a matter of habit. As I said, when I was young, and I used to go to
all
a
of us
tap
have
at the
carried
railway
water
station.
with ourselves.
No, and water at the railway station, and I used to drink that.
Yeah,
but today, without a filter, without a
Filtration
RO
or
filter,
anything.
I myself find it very inconvenient to drink that water.
Yes.
It's a
Don't
matter of
trust the
habit, it's a
water
matter
now.
of psychology. And in a place like Mumbai, where you are sitting at the moment, possibly the BMC, cleans all the water and then bring it. If you look at Singapore, the fresh water, the new water, which they call it, it's toilet water, which is again recycled, and they drink it. So
the trust
there are
is
two
gone,
aspects.
therefore
One is,
we do buy it.
Yeah, so you need to bring the trust back, and the trust cannot be brought. So there, Mr. Bhaskar comes in. There's more of media role than anybody else.
Better.
I like the way, Arun, you put it back to Bhaskar. So Bhaskar, let me expand on what Arun is saying, right? Is how do we look at water? Now, you've seen on one hand, countries like Israel, which really are on the cutting edge. And
absolutely brilliant, yes.
Dramatic. True. But just to touch on a simple topic, right? So if you look at our, arable water in India, 2 crops in particular are known as water guzzling crops, right? There is politics around it, but rice, sugarcane, for example.
Yes.
As media, if you were to change the narrative to say that while the carbon, footprint of vegetable or, plant-based is lesser, if you were to say that for every kilo of rice that India exports, India is in essence exporting 2,000 liters of water.
Yes.
Same thing, but that's how it takes to grow 1 kilo of rice.
The water footprint.
We need to really look at it. I think we are still in an infancy stage to talk about water tax. I think it starts needing with really coming back to agronomics, micro irrigation, providing that particular benefit is a very good starting point. But we also need to structurally look at what kind of crops are consuming the water and to really balance out. And if you were to do a little bit of shifting, as we said, to vegetables or other crops, you are significantly reducing the water consumption too.
Excellent. Simon, any views?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to remind you, last year, we would have not started talking about COVID. We would have started talking about water and the delayed monsoon around this time, right? I think one of the topics is that we quickly forget the pains. I have not heard one person talking about the waters where this year the monsoon is on time and we're on average normal, etc. That is one. So I'm very much with Arun. If you don't put a price to it, and I mean, we're putting a price to carbon around the world already. In India, there's still interesting approaches to subsidizing electricity and fuel for pumping water, even in the areas you were mentioning, where we're literally out of groundwater, or the groundwater is now at 300, 400, 500 meters. So it is a combination, right? I mean, you need to put a price to the water. Yeah, and even in the rain-fed areas, it's a question of water management as well.
Yes.
How do you make sure that when you have abundant rains, like we have them right now here outside of my window in Bombay, how do you collect them correctly and not have them flow out into the Arabian Sea and then have no water left for the rest? I think it takes a lot of rethinking, reshifting, combining it, putting a price on it, carbon footprinting. And I like exactly the comment that Dilip made on the exports. A lot of people are so keenly talking of exports, and I tend to sit here and say, if we don't first get a clear view on what we really want as India, right? I mean, I think exporting basmati rice has a lot of merits, but exporting commodity rice at a lower price than intervention price to the farmer, so that other countries like be it Indonesia or Vietnam make noodles out of it and have the longer value chain, is also not a good idea, right? Especially when you put the price of water up top. So again, here also to the young people, we need to look at how can we extend the value chain for agriculture in the country? How do you go into processing? How do you make sure that the cheapest of cheapest commodity, which ends up being super expensive when it is in the supermarket and has a brand on it, and rice is a super example of it. My favorite one, I spent a couple of years in Southeast Asia, was always to say, rice is a profitable crop, just not for the one who produces it. Yeah, and that is when you have government intervention and politics even making it more attractive to grow a resource guzzling crop super inefficiently to a let's say, saturated world market where you do ask yourself whether these policies really are the right thing. And that is where I would start. Yeah, put a price to water and definitely look a little bit at where can we tweak policies and, yeah, let's say at least not incentivize in the wrong direction. In terms of the cropping footprint for the country. We can grow everything here. Why do we waste so much land producing very low value grains?
Absolutely. Excellent. In fact, we'll be dwelling on this when we come to farmer distress in the subsequent sessions. And what you say is right. We have to work on policies differently. But I'm not going to ask him your questions. Vanita, you've got lots of questions with you. Wherever you can direct the questions to a panelist, that'll be wonderful. Otherwise, you can keep the questions general in nature. That's your choice.
Thank you, sir. I think I'm the voice of the audience right now.
You bet.
Yeah, but this is an exclusive question which I couldn't ignore, in fact, and it is targeted and tagged to all the panelists out here. I shall read out. This is from Mr. Nilesh Kapadia. Your idea for an ideal supply chain role model for India that not only ensures right price for the agriculturist, it also actually is an idea for an end consumer. But you also please take care of the employability of the manpower involved in the same chain. Therefore, is there any way or mechanism by which you can get rid of this system of political interference, which is acting as a middleman in manipulating the prices and devouring the obnoxious margins? Over to y'all.
Over to you. I just mentioned one small thing, which Arun Raste will talk about now and even later, that one way to get a value for the farmers was the way Korean did it for milk. But over to you all.
Okay, Nilesh, this is a tricky one. This is full of landmines. I tell you what, I think what's important is to somewhat look at where is India unique and can literally build new models which pull people into the business. We were talking about Mahindra and grapes, and anybody who knows Nasik and knows the FPO there exporting grapes quite successfully sees how a successful off-taker model builds a infrastructure around it which is world-class.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, for me, one of the ones, because I've just lately thought about it a bit more, a lot of countries produce mangoes. Every country produces mangoes in in this part of the world. But, you know, when I look at the Alfonso mango and I think of the ideal situation that we have a huge diaspora of Indians around the world who would happily have access to the Alfonso mango, I see an opportunity. I would sit here and say, guys, you have a brand, you have a customer abroad, but you today are not even able to deliver a proper carton of 12 mangoes in Bombay to the standard that somebody would expect. Right?
Yes.
So if you were to build if you want to call it like that, Nilesh, an ideal supply chain around that, I think you would have a super opportunity. You have the customers out there. It is, to my mind, one of the easier crops to produce and handle logistically in the right manner. And that is where I would start. I would not look at the commodities at this point, at the vote winners, if I may say so, because you were talking about political. I would look at niches that can be quickly profitable, where you will get a lot of farmers and people around you interested to participate. And that is where then cold storage, pack houses, etc., all will come automatically.
Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant.
Yeah. So Simon, let me follow Simon here. I think it's a very interesting question. There's multi-part to that. I would say, you know, a couple of things, right? So not only supply, which is a big problem, as you would see, roughly 30% is what is estimated is post-harvest losses in India. So on one hand, lower productivity, but that's compounded by post-harvest loss. So clearly, it is a couple of challenges, right? So there is you need to have reliable, timely market information for the farmers. As you identified, there's structural issues with supply chain. There are supply and demand forecasting issues. And Simon mentioned about, downstream, do we have the right cold storage? To me, I think I'm going to try and steer away from the political milieu, but the fact of the matter is there has been 3 recent ordinances that have come out. One you heard was about the mandis. The second one was, really reevaluating the Essential Commodities Act. They've expanded. In the past, it used to be tomato, onion, potato, the top. So now the government has expanded to total, which is literally everything, which allows the farmer to now find where he can actually sell his produce. Now, clearly the mandis had a role in price realization, in aggregation, but now, as I said, farming is limited by the land that the farmer owns, but selling his produce should be limitless. And that's one part. And the other part is also the farm to fork idea is gaining interest, not just because of COVID. I don't think it's going to be a fashion, it's going to become a reality. And to me, 2020 will be the start of the fastest technology adoption in farming. So I believe, yes, government will need to step back and let the farmers do, but it requires the young people, such as yourself, I believe, Nilesh, to really bring this forward. There is a lot of gaps in the value chain, but once you start building this ecosystem, you can see that the rent seeking will come down significantly and you will get efficiencies. What I call as the 3C1A, right? There has to be conservation. There has to be the connected agriculture. You've seen yesterday with Ambani and the new technology. So once that you start getting 4G, you start getting connection, you will see that the price discovery mechanism becomes easy and the farmer has a choice in where he wants to sell the produce. But there are governments that are also trying to figure out how do we not give them a choice in producing. So there is this push and pull. As Arun mentioned earlier, demand is there. We need to get the supply in tandem with the demand.
Arun?
I will add a little to what Simon and Dilip had said. Dilip just mentioned about SIES. And I will not get into my own sector, but I'm inclined to say that the agriculture sector needs to learn from some other sectors and some other successful examples. And one which comes straight to my mind, other than my sector, is, of course, Fab India and William Bissell. Now, what has Fab India done? All the women today, they vouch for any product which is sold in Fab India. Now, these are handicrafts. These are rural producers. And they're produced in their own markets, probably in their own surroundings, would have fetched probably 1/10 of the price at which the Fab India product is sold in Bombay or Delhi, for that matter. So it's a social enterprise. It's a new way of doing business. It's a new way of marketing. Can we have many more people in agriculture and related sectors who are more of William Bissell, who can market to a particular segment of the society what they need, taking into consideration the production needs and orienting that production needs to suit the market requirements? That's number one. So that William Bissell is something which is coming up very fast. There is other sector which is hugely successful in India and Bangladesh, is the whole microfinance sector. And the success of that microfinance sector is the women force in this world who were never taken into consideration as, possibly economic addition to the rural economy. They have come into rural economy as productive assets, and they are generating income which they are locally spending. How do we process things and increase the local consumption in local areas? So the whole wastage of 20% in horticulture could be arrested and farmers' income could be increased. That's the second part of it. And the third part of it, I again go back to the limitation part of it, and how do we probably restore some balance in terms of our usage of natural resources. So can we afford, again, using the water in Punjab and Haryana for rice, or Maharashtra water for sugarcane? And that is a question which possibly the younger generation needs to ask people who are sitting in power, and people like Bhaskar need to, I think, highlight these. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll take up the next question, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes. This is quite interesting one, and I think Raste sir will have to come back for this. So the question is, wouldn't calling it agribusiness brings an alternate perspective and hinders all the farmers from supporting it? Perhaps, considering the stringent mindsets of the farmers of India, is it validating? Is it legitimate?
Okay, so you are sitting in Mumbai, and Maharashtra had a tradition which was called Bara Balutedar. So Bara Balutedar was, these were 12 people who were artisans. So people like, a carpenter or a goldsmith or possibly a cobbler, all of them, they used to provide services to a farmer on a yearly basis without charging him anything. And at the end of the year, the farmer would, reap whatever is harvest, and he would pay all of them. So he was not a businessman, but he used to settle all the business, whatever the barter system, which was prevalent at that point of time, he used to settle all his dues at one point of time. So he was a businessman in that sense, even traditionally. And something like this was prevalent across the country at that point of time. So business, for the sake of business, is not a bad idea. What does the business do? They're trying to enhance the income of their own. If the farmer is having a mindset where he or she tries to enhance his or her own income, I don't think it is going against the interest of the farming community. They should be businessmen, and they should have imbibed this business mentality in their own production system. So if I see that everybody is growing one particular crop, which I realize that everybody grows that, probably the market for that will be limited and the prices will deplete. So therefore, I should be looking at something else, an alternate. And that is a business sense for me. Can I look at that? And Indian farmers don't do it. So we require that business sense to come into our farming. So agribusiness is a perfect word. And I really like that Dilip used that word.
Okay, I think Mr. Matthew is quite satisfied with this, and we also understand that commodification is a must at some point or the other. Fine, so we'll be heading towards Mr. Simon. A question for you. How agriculture research is progressing in the area of digitalization, artificial intelligence, especially by companies like Bayer, Syngenta, East Wheat Seeds, or East West Seeds likewise. So how do you see the progress of agricultural research? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, Vanita, thank you for the question. And it relates in several ways. I mean, first of all, when you talk about research, it is true that an increasing amount, if not, I would say, a major amount of research today goes into digitalization of agriculture globally. Yeah, and there's different drivers to that. One of them is clearly what Arun was mentioning in terms of how do you optimize the ecological footprint of farming. You can only do that with the help of sensors, the Internet of Things, and ultimately machine learning. And that is where clearly the large agriculture is moving. You go into environments which are a bit, take Europe for good and bad reasons, where standards, ecological standards may be set at a very high bar. You literally as a farmer need to be in a position to justify your agronomic interventions. This is only possible if your agronomic activity is digitalized and is with that basically traceable. Now, a lot of people may be thinking then, well, how does it apply to smallholders in India? And here I would tell you, this is going to be, to my mind, the boost for India. There's a couple of things which we underestimate. I mentioned it, I think, when opening up, but didn't go into the details. Look at the demographics. 20 years ago, we would have been sitting here and saying we have achieved self-sufficiency in grains, so we can feed the nation. But there was a lot of talk around how do we educate the rural parts of India. Today, I think 90%, don't quote me exactly, but 90% of farmers' children are school educated to a point that a high percentage would even be going into cities, into universities.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you look at the age profile of South Asian farmers and you ask them what they want their kids to do, 80% will tell you, I want them to be doctors, I want them to be whatever, teachers, but definitely not farmers. That means the structure of farming, the physical intervention of farming must change. And I am increasingly of the opinion you're going to be seeing much, much more what I call weekend farmers that do farming online, but off-site. Yeah. So you will be seeing people like you going out of university, and you may be working in Bangalore for that matter in an IT company, but you will not give up the farm that your parents have back in the village. But you might be sitting and managing that farm with your smartphone. One of the biggest issues that we as an industry have been facing is that very often it is just not economical to interact with every single farmer. We have 130 million farmers in the country, but actually you're going to be finding East West and Seminis and Bayer and Syngenta and UPL very often always talking to the same farmer. Well, there's 10 or 15 farmers we don't talk to because they're too far away. And given their economic potential, it is just not viable to have that interaction. Now think of digital as a means for a zero-cost touch point. If it costs me nothing to have an additional person on this webinar by FPJ, the Free Press goes out and puts it into these large forums. I think when we opened up, you were saying, I don't know, was it 20,000 people were seeing one of the former sessions over time on YouTube? Think of it. Think of it in print, how many newspapers you would have had to send around the country to be able to get that mass attention. And COVID has been a super catalyst.
Yes.
My 3,500 people that I have out there talking to farmers every day cannot visit them physically. I speak with 1 lakh farmers a day as buyer via digital tools. 3 months ago, I would have told you this is impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Well said, sir. I think Madhav will be quite satisfied with this answer as well. And over to Rajan sir now.
Okay, on the same question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think Simon covered a lot of ground. So let me specifically go back to from the R&D standpoint, right? And I think like anywhere else, companies like ourselves, East West, and I believe the rest of them, we are looking at advanced agronomics. There is, as you've heard, as you get into this connected agriculture, we're looking at sensors. You also heard IoT, Internet of Things, and blockchain. So particularly from an R&D standpoint, we are looking at gene editing, molecular-based breeding, yes. So to get trait expressions faster. And because you heard earlier, a lot of India is, you've heard this common statement, we can grow anything in India. It is really becoming that sharp for East West is how can we do market-based breeding? How do we get the crop to actually, fit the need of the farmers? We are dabbling early stage on precision robotics. We're looking at, bringing in technologies, not just in seed production and breeding, but across the board. As you said, in the last 100 days, what was considered to be impossible, just like Simon mentioned, we have connected with over 150,000 farmers. Now, people tend to say, well, urban India is good, but rural India is not connected. We were pleasantly surprised that farmers were interacting with us, not just one way, but 2 ways. We were also getting insights, which we never had before. We have done crop tours. We have done e-detailing, something that if you come from pharma, that you would dabble with doctors. Now, if you think about an agriculture company detailing to farmers, we've done it. Now, to me, this is a sign of things to come, right? We're going to get there. And I have never, the word impossible suddenly is kind of fading into the lexicon. And I hope we continue this. And to me, the connected farmer is the key, which we always thought there would be a lot of gaps. Our realization is that it's now no longer the case. And I think that's where it is. The technology is so pervasive. The only thing I'm seeing in the last 100 days is the resistance is coming down very quickly.
True, sir. So with this, there's one thought-provoking question, in fact, from Mr. Bansode. He has given a comparative graph. So when we understand the share of agricultural sector in contribution with respect to GDP during 1950-51 was 56.5%. So why is the percentage dropping every now and then? And with the decline, it's 13% right now. So what do we do to increase the same? As you spoke about resistance as well. So how do we increase this percentage, knowing the vitality of agriculture?
One second. I think we had already explained that in the lecture before I went. Basically, when you have other sectors growing faster than agriculture, automatically agriculture will have a lower percentage GDP. There are only two ways in which it can happen. One is agricultural prices go up and value addition goes up in agriculture. The second is people leave agriculture, so that with a small population, you're having a larger share of GDP. I think both are happening.
Yeah.
You have to improve value in agriculture.
Yeah, and remember, I mean, we're still looking at more than half of the working population being dependent on agriculture. And please, with all due respect, post demonetization, etc., agriculture is very, very difficult to put into figures. There's a lot of economic activity happening. The livelihood of this country depends more on agriculture than on manufacturing or other areas which might, in terms of value add, seem to be important in GDP. But I think India is in many ways still very dependent on agriculture. And I would not go by percentages, but I do see the value growth opportunities are unbelievable. Yeah, and I think that is where, if you rather look at what is the classical management strategy, blue ocean agriculture in India, for my understanding, is the area where the probability of significant success, if you have a good idea, is super, super high.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Simon, just to give credence to your point, just look at the number of times you're getting funding now for ag tech companies, right? It's capital flow for the first time since our independence. You're seeing that. Now, I think we need to kind of really change that frame, that farming or agriculture is not a farmer, the narrative that has been told to us many years ago. There is so much. The word agribusiness connotates that there are everything else from organic farming through, precision farming, sensor-based technology. So there is much more. And as Simon says, the ecosystem impacts much, much more than just a number on the GDP.
Okay, can we take two more questions? Because then we have to wind up after that. I know there are lots of questions. We'll have to cut them down.
Yeah, this is in response already, in fact, by Mr. Biswajit. He's pointing out, considering the government control over supply of farm inputs and the price of outputs, other interventions are also coming in the form of many doles and subsidies. Here, we are demotivated. Where is the scope of future entrepreneurship?
If you don't focus on the negatives, very, very simple. I mean, honestly, post-COVID, what have we seen? And I believe especially Dilip will have felt that there was a very short moment where we really were concerned that farmers would go for low risk and would basically go into what I call governmentally procured crops. People were moving out of vegetables. They were really trying to de-risk their business. Luckily enough, I think this has changed quite quickly. There is a lot of open market out there. Yes, it's true. If you're looking at inputs in some areas, they are highly governmentally intervened. That would not be the area where I would seek, where I would seek my opportunity. I would seek my opportunity in the niche, which is not regulated, and with that, prove also to the government that it's possible. Do not believe that the Indian government is happy to shell out as much as they do on commodities above world market prices. Everybody in this country is an economist, but there is currently a need to do that for political reasons or for social reasons or whatever. But you prove, and I mean, we have examples. Telangana is going in and saying we want to manage better in how far what is grown here. Now, is this the best time? Is it the best way? It doesn't matter. But ultimately, you will be seeing also government interventions going at how can I reduce unnecessary outflows? Because honestly, guys, the economy tanking, the government is going to be looking at every euro or every dollar or every rupee, and is not going to be happily procuring rice at twice the world market prices. Correct. So I see this really as the time for things to change. And there is a lot of areas where you can grow today in agriculture where is zero government intervention.
That's true.
In fact, what Dilip said right at the beginning, this is the 1991 for agriculture. What 1991 did for industry and brought in liberalization, this year might do the same thing for agriculture.
That's welcoming 4.0.
No, that was a very prescient remark.
So we'll take up the last question, and I would like to invite Mr. Arun once again. So the question is critical a bit. Why do we tend to limit the discussions only to quality issues? Why we are only revolving around the nutrition and safety? What about the food safety-free products? Don't you feel that they are still poisonous and there are a lot of chemical pesticides involved? So how do we go ahead with this? How do we overcome this challenge or problem?
That will open a Pandora's box. So there is a branch of agriculture which is known as organic agriculture, which is chemical-free, insecticide-free. Traditional agriculture, which has been practiced post-Green Revolution, and organic agriculture, they don't go together. And therefore, organic agriculture is hardly probably in some percentiles of the total agriculture market. But look at, if you look at a small boy or a girl, and if you show him any packaging, and they see that, green mark, and they realize, oh, this is veg, and the red mark is non-veg, right? Same way going forward, possibly, there will be more people who will be looking at vegan, there will be more people who will be looking at pesticide-free or organic, food, and therefore there will be demand. Now, the biggest drawback for organic is, and, sometimes we need to accept it, the cost of agriculture when you are doing only organic possibly is a little higher. So there is a classic, subsidy being paid for water, subsidy being paid for pesticides, subsidy being paid for insecticides, subsidy being paid for even seeds. And organic agriculture, when you are doing that, you are doing away with all the subsidies. And therefore, your cost of production goes a little up. That's one. Number two, there's something called fair trade, which was very prevalent in the Western world, where the consumer was willing to pay 10 or 15% premium for products which they wanted. And organic, at least 10 years ago, and when it came in, people are willing to pay about 10-15% more for organic products. So there is a demand, pull. And if that demand pull in urban centers, at least in Bangalore and Pune, these two cities, there is a lot of this demand pull. And if that comes in, the younger generation, if they start demanding that, there will be a lot of people who will be going for organic agriculture. Obviously, the farmer need to get compensated for whatever reduction in his total production is. And if the consumer is willing to pay a little more, obviously the farmer will be more than willing to go for it.
True, very true. And in fact, when you talk about nutrition, it means nutrition which is also healthy. So You can't separate one from the other. You have to make sure that it's safe.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't have poisonous nutrition.
Yeah, I think we have to be on a road of prosperity, and we have to depend on agriculture for the same if we want to be.
Absolutely.
With this, I think we close the Q&A session.
Yes,
may I just,
we would. Yes, please.
May I still give it one comment though, because
please.
I mean, it's important to note, and I'm a little bit concerned with some of the discussions. There is no unsafe food out there. The fact of the matter, even when you see some of the reporting of residues and exceeding even what they call maximum residue levels, it is never that you would find that the food is literally poisonous or anything like that. I think it's just important to realize how things are sometimes blown out of proportion. The whole organic movement has its merits, especially around what I would call the feel-good factor and what people believe in, which is great. But yes, it's true, it is more expensive. And when you look at a country where today we are already finding that our efficiency of input use, and I'm talking again, all the inputs, is as low as it is, where you even to have yields go down on average, this would be a huge problem. So while we do see, and I mean, there's beautiful things, again, here, for guys, investments, vertical farms, rooftop farming in cities, generally done in an organic manner, no question. Yeah, but that also means that you're literally paying whatever it is, 300 rupees for a salad head. Yeah. So just be aware that this is an interesting area for people who are really highly believing to be health conscious and can afford it. But we always need to balance it between what does make sense for the whole of the country.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I think we will call it a day, but next Thursday, we have one on milk. One of the biggest revolutions that took place in India, and has lots of lessons for agriculture. Not just milk, but across agriculture, what milk taught us. Right. Before I ask the principal to give concluding remarks and wind up today's session, one more small reminder. There is, SIES has already sent to you a feedback form. Please fill in the feedback form, send it over to us. That is important for us. And if you have any more questions, send them over to Dr. Vanitha Rane. She will try to see if she can get answers for you.
Thank you, all the attendees. One last remark, and thank you especially to Simon sir, because what you spoke right now, fortunately, is pointing towards the objective of the webinar, making India the food basket for world's avenue in future. Definitely, this is going to create more dependency on agriculture, and this is how we can contribute more towards GDP as well. And being media educators, we will definitely see to it that we see that our students are more inclined and interested towards agriculture. This also brings us to agrojournalism, which is going to be a future area altogether for them to study.
Yes.
Principal ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was an excellent discussion from all three of you. A lot of things to learn, a lot of things to unlearn, I'm sure, from the students' perspective. The future ahead is going to be a little different, challenging, exciting. At the same time, as Vanitha said rightly, the new words that we are trying to coin as agrojournalism, the clarity and the perspective should be in place. I think then the students can really make up some right decisions with all the thoughts that you all have shared with us. I'm sure in the rest of the Thursdays that we are going to meet each area, each aspect of the agricultural entire world. I think it's going to be exciting. And India cannot at any time be looked at it without agriculture. So much so we have contributed right from the Adam Eve days that Arun started off with the apple. I think till today, whatever salads that come on the table, every bit of it, we need to understand where and how and what is the cost for which we are paying it, who are all behind it, and how do we make it more enriching to us. Thank you all for joining and shaking hands with SIES. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Dilip.
Thank you.
Thank you to all
of you. Wonderful.
Thank you, Vanitha.
Thank you, attendees.
Dilip.
Thank you to our media partner, FPJ, Zoom, YouTube. All thank you. I hope we all are going to have wonderful journey, organic journey from farm to fork on our table, as Principal Ma'am rightly said. Thank you, ma'am, for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all the technical team behind. And
yes.
See you soon on 23rd July, Thursday, with another new topic. As sir said, milk the backbone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.